Hello everyone, welcome back. I hope your day is starting off just great. Let's introduce the video here with this beautiful picture of, can you guess? Huntsville lit up in the evening. Taken and shared on the I Choose Canada group site by Kenneth. Thanks for sharing the image. Beautiful. Now, in this video, I want to contrast two things. We're going to talk a little bit with numbers, just warning you right away, and I'm going to contrast what I feel is a good economic policy and a bad economic policy. One policy that's sort of the signature policy that's included in the recent budget released by Mark Carney and the Liberals, and one policy that represents kind of the signature policy for the opposition Conservatives led by Pierre Poilievre. Now, both policies in those leaders' minds are designed to attract investment and stimulate the Canadian economy. One of them is a little bit complicated and a little difficult to explain to Canadians because it'll take more than 6.5 seconds to explain it. And it's easily attacked politically. The other policy is easily understood by Canadians. It takes less than 6.5 seconds to discuss, and it's very difficult to attack. And I'll let you be the judge of which is a better or worse policy when I go through the numbers here. I'm interested in your comments in the comment section after I give you my analysis and my opinion. The first policy can be found in the budget that was just tabled by the Liberals, and it's called a productivity super deduction. And I'll just recap it briefly here for you. The bullet points here are the policy would allow immediate expensing, i.e. 100% first year write-off of manufacturing or processing machinery and equipment, immediate expensing of clean energy generation and energy conservation equipment and zero-emission vehicles, immediate expensing of productivity-enhancing assets, including patents, data networks, infrastructure, and computers, immediate expensing of capital expenditures for scientific research and experimental development, and most importantly, immediate expensing for manufacturing and processing buildings. This policy is designed to attract large-scale investments in some big projects in Canada. When I say manufacturing and processing buildings, think of an auto manufacturing plant or a critical minerals processing facility. And it's designed to do that without the government having to write a check, without a subsidy or a payout to these companies. So let me explain how the policy works. Any company that's contemplating making a big investment like this, like do we open a critical minerals facility in northern Saskatchewan in Canada? Is that a good economic decision for us? One of the ways they rank their opportunities is by asking themselves, how long will the project take to pay out? Do you understand what I mean by that? It's a simple calculation that some companies will use. Let's use the example of a critical minerals processing facility that this super deduction targets. That's the type of investment it's trying to attract. Let's say the processing facility, the machinery and everything will cost the company $3 billion to set up. And then they're planning on processing the minerals and selling about $1 billion of processed minerals every year. How long will it take them to pay out? 3 years, right? Well, no, not exactly. They'll process the minerals, they'll sell $1 billion worth of product in 1 year, and under normal circumstances, they'll be taxable. They'll have to pay tax to the federal government, probably to the provincial government as well, at whatever the tax rate is. And that initial investment they made, that $3 billion, they'll be able to deduct portions of that amortized over a long period of time. That's how the tax system works right now. Have you ever done your taxes? Are you self-employed? Like, for example, myself, I buy equipment to make these videos. I bought this really expensive recording equipment so that I can show you these videos in 4K. All of you that are watching on a big screen TV, the picture's clear because I invested the money to buy this equipment. When I do my taxes, I can deduct the cost of buying this equipment, but I can't deduct it all. There's a schedule, it's complicated. I just type it into the tax software. And for example, I think I'm allowed to deduct 20% of my costs the first year. Then in the second year, I can deduct 20% of the remaining cost, so 20% of 80. And then the next year, I can deduct another 20% of the remaining, which is, and it goes on and on and on. You can deduct a little bit each year for like a decade until you finally deduct the full cost of the equipment that you're using. I'm just a lowly schmo making YouTube videos. But if you're trying to attract a large corporation to make a major investment, let's get back to describing what this policy does. Allowing them to deduct immediately the full cost, it would go like this. The company in the first year produces $1 billion of critical minerals, but they've spent $3 billion in capital to set up their plant. They can deduct as much of it as they want immediately. So they'll use $1 billion worth in that first year. They'll use a $1 billion tax deduction to offset their $1 billion in sales of critical minerals. So they'll report zero income for that year. They'll pay zero income tax. Then the next year, they'll produce another $1 billion worth of critical minerals, but they'll have $2 billion left in tax deductions from the initial investment they made, and they'll deduct another $1 billion. So in the second year, they'll pay zero tax. So in this simple example, and remember, we just made these numbers up, this project will take 3 years to pay out because they can deduct as fast as they can the initial investment they made. And this is very attractive for companies because it will accelerate the speed that the project pays out. They'll get their initial investment back quickly. And take particular note that in this whole discussion, this hasn't cost the government any new money. The government hasn't had to write a check or subsidize these businesses. They've just allowed them to operate and deduct their costs and not pay tax. So the government's deferred the revenue from taxing that business until they've paid out. So the company gets an incentive to start here. The industry gets going here. People have jobs here and they'll collect a salary and they'll pay income tax while they're working. And some of you will say, well, that's not fair. The lowly employees have to pay, but the company doesn't. Well, the company had to invest the $3 billion to build the thing in the first place to be able to hire those people. So everybody wins. The company is happy because they'll pay out faster. It's a better investment for them. The employees are happy because they've got jobs. The government's happy because they've helped grow the economy and they're going to have future income down the road when the company becomes taxable. It's a win-win-win. This is a good policy. This is a smart policy. But this took longer than 6.5 seconds to explain. And I had to use math. And I probably lost a lot of viewers while I was doing it. And it's very easily attacked politically. Someone could just say, well, I don't know what these guys are talking about. This is another liberal boondoggle, fiddling with numbers, massive deficits. Everything's broken. It's horrible. But if you hung in there and listened to my explanation, you'll have to agree that this is a very smart, targeted policy designed to attract large investment. All right, now let's move on to the next one. And I'll talk about this policy with a picture of Parksville Bay in the background, posted by EMI on the I Choose Canada group. This is a signature Pierre Poilievre conservative policy, and it's very easy to explain in under 6.5 seconds. It's basically axe the tax. And the latest axe the tax is this.
Everyone who's looking to buy Canadian, to support Canadian workers, will be able to save money as a result of this announcement. Axing the GST on a $50,000 Canadian-made automobile will save $2,500 to the car buyer.
His latest policy announcement is, let's axe the tax on Canadian-built automobiles to encourage Canadians to buy Canadian automobiles. And I'm all for Canadians buying Canadian-built automobiles. Let's axe the GST and everyone will save money. We'll buy more Canadian automobiles and this will be really good for our economy. It's very easy to explain. You can say axe the tax on cars in less than 6.5 seconds. Most people will nod and say, yeah, that's a great idea. I don't want to pay the GST on automobiles. That's a great thing. Why don't we just do something, a common sense solution like that? Well, let's look at the math involved with this. Now, I've done a lot of research to come up with these numbers and let me share them with you. This is a list of all the cars that were sold in Canada in 2024 that are built in Canada, the number of cars. There's the list there. If you add up all those numbers, you get 195,857. That's how many Canadian-built cars Canada bought last year in 2024. At an average price of $50,000 each, that comes out to $9,792,000,000 worth of vehicles. That's how much Canadians spent on cars built in Canada last year. And they all paid GST, 5% of this number. And if you do that calculation, you come up with $489 million. Almost $500 million of GST is what the government collected last year on purchases of Canadian-built vehicles in our country. $500 million in revenue. So Pierre Poilievre's suggestion is, why don't we just drop the GST and Canadians will buy more cars built in Canada. And that's true. Canadians will buy more cars if we drop the GST on Canadian-built cars. Let's say if we drop the GST, Canadians buy an extra 20,000 cars. That would be a good outcome. Yeah, Canadians will buy 20,000 more cars built in Canada. So let's do the math. How much will the government collect in GST next year if we implement this program? Zero, because we're going to eliminate the GST. So the government all of a sudden loses almost $500 million in revenue. The $489 million that they would have collected on another 195,000 car sales, if they had done nothing, they won't get that. They're going to get zero. So you can do this calculation. The 489 million divided by the 20,000 extra cars that we're going to sell because Canadians will have an incentive to buy them because there's no GST. You do that and you find out that for each one of those extra cars that was sold, for each one of those extra cars that Canadians buy now, it's costing the federal government over $24,000 in lost revenue. Does that sound like a good plan after I described the math? Now you can be sure if the Conservatives were in power and they formed the government and they implemented this policy, and at the end of next year there was 20 extra thousand cars sold, Canadian cars in Canada, they would say this policy is a huge success. We've increased Canadian car sales by 20,000. This is fantastic. But they wouldn't mention the fact that they've lost almost $500 million in revenue. All of a sudden, surprise, surprise, the deficit's gone up. How did the deficit go up $500 million? Well, they'll blame it on, that was the Liberals' fault. They did something over the past 10 years and the deficit's out of control because Canada's broken and we're going to have to cut spending somewhere. This is an example of a bad policy that's going to result in more political sloganeering and trying to spin the results in a way that makes it look like it's good. This policy would cost the Canadian government $500 million in lost tax revenue, poof, just gone next year, to increase Canadian car sales by 20,000 units. It's a terrible policy, but it's a really easy policy to sell because you can sell it in less than 6.5 seconds. We should axe the tax on cars, and then everyone will save money, and it'll be good for the economy. Did that take 6.5 seconds? People will eat this up without doing the analysis because the tax system and economic policy is very complicated. And I didn't even mention how the increased demand on the Canadian cars, if you drop the GST, would maybe encourage these car dealers to raise the price on those cars. Consumers at the end of the day maybe will not save 5%. Maybe they'll only save 2% because the car companies will raise their prices. So you'll have a policy there where the Canadian government is adding to the deficit to make car companies more profitable. It's all very complicated. It's all difficult to explain. It takes more than 6.5 seconds. And this video has gone on long enough, but I wanted to give you an example here of a good policy versus a bad policy, and how when you first look at it, if you just hear the slogan or a 6.5 second video on X, which you'll just swipe and move on to the next one, people will tend to make up their minds and have an opinion without having all the information or analysis done. I did a little bit of research and some calculations in order to put this video together. So if you appreciate it, please subscribe to the channel and keep the channel numbers growing. If you appreciate the work I'm doing and want to support me on a monthly basis, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below. Leave your comments in the comment section and let me know what you think, and I will catch you all on the next one.